afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream. It is Monday, July 20th. 2020. And I know what you're thinking. You expected to see the big boss man occupying this chair, but no, Ezra for the entire week is on assignment. So you're going to have to deal with myself, David Menzies, and my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn Reid, out in Alberta. Or sometimes this week it'll be Andrew, or maybe Sheila and Kian. We'll figure it out. But Ezra is off for the entire week on super special assignments in Wild Rose Country. And without further ado, let me welcome my aforementioned co-host, Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, my friend?
I'm great. What a great way to kick off the week, a live stream with my friend David and all of my friends at home who are tuning in on the live stream. I suppose we should tell everybody what we're doing here before we drive this truck right into the ditch. The way we always
wait a second. I object. For a brief moment in time, we had the record in terms of record revenue coming into the live stream, Sheila. So we're not always in the ditch. Sometimes it's just the shoulder, I guess.
The weeds. We're always in the weeds. Mr. Producer, I cannot see the Skype feed on my side, so I'm just flying blind, which is fine. I'll cope, but if you could fix that, that would be really helpful. Let's tell everybody what we're doing again before we put this right into the ditch. And speaking of the ditch, my husband bought me a new farm truck over the weekend, and it's beautiful. It's used, as all farm trucks tend to be. It's a Dodge Laramie 3500 dually, red. It's going to be great. I can't wait to get groceries in it. The Hutterites are going to love me. Anyways, already I'm off on a tangent. Let's tell everybody what we're doing here. You mentioned the fact that we had the revenue record for the Super Chats, and really that's what we're doing here. We're giving our viewers a chance to interact with each other in the live chat, and I always go back and read them. I take the criticism as well as the compliments, but it also gives our viewers a chance to support the work that we do completely willingly, because we don't do what the CBC does, or for that matter, the rest of the media industrial complex in this country. We aren't sponsored by the government. We would never be sponsored by the government. We're fiercely independent, but because we're fiercely independent, we rely on the support of our viewers at home to keep us going. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done during this pandemic while everybody else was sort of scaling back the work that they were doing. We ramped it up. I think we did more journalism than anybody else during this pandemic. But what you can do to support us is if you go down to the bottom of the live chat, there is a little dollar sign. You can click on that. It'll allow you to put a dollar amount in there and leave a comment. And your comment length is based on the amount of money that you donate. And that'll pin it to the top so that everybody can see it. It'll highlight it in a bright color. And David and I will read it or we'll comment on it. If you got a question that you want us to answer, we'll do our best to do that. And if I miss them, then Mr. Producer will definitely send them to us so that we do read them on air. And yes, Ezra now holds the daily Super Chat record. David and I were back-to-back victors, and we've got a full week, David, to beat the boss. Well, and so let's do it.
So there you go, folks. If you have any kind of a grudge against Ezra Levent, donate lots of money to the Rebel News. And by the way, I want to thank our viewers, Sheila, and I'm sure I speak for you. This is a terrible time for so many millions of Canadians during what's happened to our economy during this Wuhan virus. This is probably the worst time for anyone, any charity to ask for money. You guys are beautiful. You keep coming through. You keep supporting us. And, you know, I got to say, Sheila, there is this element you see online. I mean, it's unavoidable. It's the trolls out there that will say, oh, look at this, another excuse for Rebel News to ask for money. But you know what? That's all we're doing, Sheila. We're asking, would you prefer the direct withdrawal system that the CBC, the Canadian newspapers, the Canadian magazines, and Maclean's magazine are using on your paycheck? Because they don't ask, they just take with the Justin Trudeau Liberal government cutting the checks. So all we can do is ask, and if you don't want to contribute or you can't contribute, I understand that. But geez, Sheila, how can anyone condemn us for just asking?
Well, yeah, and if you aren't sure about whether or not you should contribute, go to our YouTube page and see the fruits of our labor and see what we do with the little bits of money that people give us. I'm currently working on another scandal. Last week, we uncovered 3 separate contracts, sole source contracts to and we did it with not the $1.5 billion that CBC gets. We do it with the little bits of money that people give us, like in this super chat. And we really do stretch your dollar. But on the flip side, boy, CBC, they're sure wasting a bunch of your money. I mean, it is incredible how little work they do with all that money. I don't know where it all goes. Actually, I do. It's satellite trucks. They like their satellite trucks.
You know, you're right, Sheila. And what you said earlier, the fact that so many of these CBC journalists are just, I guess, doing journalism remotely. They don't want to go into the field and get their hands dirty. Yeah. I can tell you, I have never been busier in my life than during this pandemic. And that's not a complaint, folks. I would rather be overworked than underworked. And we have been, I think, breaking some very significant stories that the media is ignoring, or even worse, case in point, the illegal occupation of Nathan Phillips Square by that group of squatters called Afro-Indigenous Rising. People that the media actually silently support, Sheila, the lawbreakers, the takers, the scoundrels. So, that's why we do need this money to finance, the kind of journalism that we're bringing to you on incredibly limited resources, both in terms of financial power and manpower. Or I guess that would be person power if we're talking about the Justin Trudeau Liberals. And by the way, speaking of the makers versus takers file, I think this is the most foreboding thing for so many homeowners in our country, Sheila, is the whole idea of a capital gains tax, or I think as it's being called, a home equity tax. Basically, you sell your house and you're going to pay the piper. And a lot of people are predicting that this could indeed be a reality, Sheila. We've seen with this pandemic, in about 4 months, this government has spent 10 years worth of budgets with various bailouts and the CERB and the list goes on. I think it's politically, it's a third rail issue, but maybe these, Justin Trudeau Liberals are just so cocky and confident that they can get away with this, that they're going to do it. What are your thoughts? Well,
this is something that the Liberals said that they weren't absolutely going to do. They were never going to do this. And when Conservatives tried to say during the campaign that this is what the Liberals have in the works for you, the Liberals denied it and denied it and denied it. And now Blacklocks, completely independent Blacklocks, broke this story. While CBC again gets $1.5 billion to, I guess, bury the news. They don't really do the news. Blacklocks broke this huge story about how they're going to go after homeowners. So these, and when you think about the money that you spend on your house, you've already paid taxes on this.
Yeah.
You've paid taxes on this. You've paid income tax on it. You've paid all the different home taxes based on the jurisdiction in which you live. Some jurisdictions add all these taxes that we can't even imagine that you guys pay out here in Alberta. But even after that, so the government has already gotten their piece of the pie several times over before you have enough money left over to scrape together to invest in this vehicle of wealth creation, because really your house is one of the biggest vehicles for wealth creation for people. It's your retirement for a lot of people. And it's that one thing that you've already paid taxes on that you can pass on to your kids, be it through the actual property or the money. And now the government wants that too. It's like they're incentivizing serfdom, aren't they? Because when you don't want to own a house, because it doesn't make sense to own a house, because if you accumulate wealth in the house, the government's going to come take that too. So it's better off not just to be a property owner, which, I mean, is ridiculous because, then you're being incentivized to be a serf and not a property owner.
Yeah, Sheila, the more the Trudeau Liberals deny that they're going to implement this, the further the needle on my internal BS detector veers into the red zone. I mean, after all, going back more than a century, we're talking about income tax to fund the First World War being a temporary measure. I guess it's been over a century, so in terms of geological time, that is temporary. A century is just a blink of an eyelash when it comes to geologists. And the second thing is, Sheila, always be prepared for the weasel word excuse. Yes, when we said that, we meant it. We were sincere, pinky swear.
Then
circumstances beyond anyone's control, i.e. this Wuhan virus and the costs that we absolutely could not foresee at the time we said this, that has changed things, and therefore we're not breaking a promise, we're kind of amending what we've said. But you would think, Sheila, like I said, this is toxic in terms of a political thing to run on. Homeowners, I would imagine, I'm pretty sure there's stats to show this, are more likely to cast a vote than renters. And therefore, if that's a possibility and the Conservatives can't make hay on this issue, wow.
Well, yeah, when you have Justin Trudeau coming along to snatch a bunch of equity that you've accumulated in your house, and you've been minding your business, paying your bills, you've already been taxed on this income several times over, and he comes along to just snatch a big chunk out of it because he feels entitled to it after lying to you and saying he wasn't going to do it. If the Conservatives can't capitalize on this, what are they doing? I mean, you could create a bunch of Conservative voters by really driving home this issue that you're trying to get ahead, you're doing everything right, and the Liberals are keeping you down. And of course, just watch Justin Trudeau, just like the We charity, his selection of the We charity saying, oh, no, it wasn't us, it wasn't me, even though they're paying my mom. Yeah. It was these independent bureaucrats over here who came up with this harebrained idea to give them money for years and years and years, and then this big $1 billion contract. It's the public servants coming up with these ideas, and we trust our public servants, so we're just going to adopt it. You watch. It's going to be the same thing. It's not a Liberal thing. The public servants came up with this great idea, and we're just adopting it because we just do whatever the public service tells us.
And sure. The other thing, too, from a social justice angle, because you would hear this from the younger generation, well, why is it that you people have these homes that are worth $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever the amount is, whatever the market is, Sheila? You know what? The people living in those homes probably took a quarter of a century to pay off the mortgage, if not more years than that, Sheila. Paying off a brick at a time through hard work, and labor. It's not as though Canadians, a select group of privileged Canadians, won a home lottery and got a free house. This is the result of blood, sweat, and tears. And then you have a government with the audacity coming in saying, we're going to skim some off for us so we can hand out to, like you said, the We charity, the media that we control now. No, it's unacceptable.
Well, it's hard enough to get into home ownership these days anyways, with the fact that home prices are inflated in many of Canada's major cities. I don't know how young people ever get into home ownership in the likes of Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. I have no idea. I don't even know how, adults, middle-aged people, I don't know how they're affording those houses and still being able to live and enjoy life, not just working to pay the mortgage, which it seems like that's what a lot of people are doing. And a lot of that, as was pointed out in the Conservative debate that was hosted by Vancouver Centre, the EDA there, the Conservative EDA, a lot of it is because, for one reason, the homes are being bought up by, at least in Vancouver, by people who are not living in Canada, like CCP high-ranking officials with a lot of money that are buying up these homes in bulk in Canada to sort of hide their money here. And so what that does is cut into the supply and drive the prices up. And then with unfettered immigration, it causes a housing imbalance. And then again, supply and demand says that the housing prices go up. So if you pump the brakes on immigration, allow that to normalize, and pump the brakes, or at least try to uncover why they're investing all this Chinese money in the Lower Mainland and maybe boot that out and stop that. It'll sort of fix the housing market. But even then, with all these inflated housing prices and young people saying, I'll never be able to own a house, I'll never. The few that do, here comes Justin Trudeau to just pick their pockets. It's disgusting.
But Sheila, can I just bring up one thing? And I see evidence of this occurring right now here in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. It is maybe one element of a silver lining for this hideous Wuhan virus we've had to deal with going back to March. And I always look for silver linings, and it might be this. Right now in Toronto, cottage country real estate is super hot. And the reason it's not that people suddenly came into a windfall and they're going to buy recreational property, they're actually moving out of the GTA to cottage country because they can work remotely. And why would you want to work remotely in a concrete jungle in a little 700 square foot condominium tower when you can do it right beside a lake and not have to deal with gridlock and not have to deal with pollution and you name it. Now, I understand that's not a solution for, I mean, if you drive a truck, you can't work from home, obviously. But if you have the kind of job where you can teleconference and Zoom and what have you, Sheila, then you don't have to be in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, or any major city. You could be in Tutayutuk, for that matter, and still get things done. And when you move into these smaller communities, then things become affordable. And, you know, whenever our old normal comes back, Sheila, maybe that'll be an option for so many office workers that, listen, we found out that we could function and function nicely during the Wuhan pandemic. It's your choice. You want to come in Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, like old time? No problem. You want to work from your home, wherever that home may be? No problem at all either. So I think that's one silver lining that might come out of this hideous pandemic we've been dealing with, Sheila.
Yeah, I'm excited for everybody to come around to my way of thinking. That's really been the silver lining in this pandemic. I've said all along, it's not conducive to human health and I guess now it really helps viruses tear through communities when you have people stacked on top of each other living in 700 square foot coffins. And, you know, I don't like public transportation. I know a lot of people use it because it's cheap or whatever, but shoehorning unwilling people into cities first, because there's this whole movement towards urban planning and rejecting urban sprawl in one of the least populous places on the planet, Canada. But like crowding us together, stacking us up, and then shoving us into crowded subways, you get New York. And you get diseases that are tearing through New York that are not tearing through places like Florida in the same way. And maybe I'm not hopeful, but maybe they might re-examine how they urban plan cities, because with a little bit of green space and a backyard, people are a lot healthier when they've got to be cooped up in their houses for the next time mainland China tries to kill us all. Yeah.
And Sheila, speaking of silver, Mr. Producer informs me we have some super chats coming in. So time for you to sing for your supper.
Okay, we've got nobody wants that. K5167304 gives us $5 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but that's very generous. K5167304 also gives us $1. Again, I don't see a super chat. Observer Dude gives us £5. If Canada built a statue to Trudeau, do you think Antifa would vandalize it or worship it? They did vandalize it. I don't know if it was Antifa or just some clever conservative, but there is a statue of senior Prime Minister Trudeau, and they painted his face black. And for once, I could see the family resemblance. And they investigated it as though it were a hate crime.
Oh, it is York Regional Police has the hate crime unit on that. I visited that statue. It's in Thornhill behind Promenade Mall. By the way, not a very good likeness. Dear Elliot Trudeau. I thought he looked better with the black face on, to tell you the truth. But yeah, that is a hate crime. It's Thornhill's Day of Infamy. And but meanwhile, you have other statues being egged and have rocks thrown at and threats of tearing down, like Sir John A. Macdonald in Kingston. And the mob goes to the Kingston police and says, would you please not show up to our mob scene, because the sight of uniforms and police cruisers trigger us.
Yeah.
And apparently whoever's running the Kingston Police Service, and by the way, this is not criticism to the rank and file of the police service, go, yeah, okay, yeah, nothing to see here. Have fun with that statue. Go ahead. Unbelievable.
I don't know if you guys can hear whining in the background, but that's my dog. She's trapped in my office. And I just had to text one of the kids to come down and let her out. So if you hear like sliding, rolling doors, that's the dog being freed from my clutches. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you, Riley. Okay. Bill Howie gives us $5 Canadian. The Independent Press Gallery of Canada must host a federal election debate that will focus on Canadian priorities and not leftist narratives. Media host Candace Ezra Spencer. There is an Independent Press Gallery debate coming up in Montreal. I think it's on the 29th, I believe it is. And Rebel News will be there with a very strong showing representing our company. So I'm not sure who's hosting. It's definitely not Ezra. And I don't think it's Spencer Fernando. I'm not sure if it's Candace. I'm not sure who's the moderator.
Sheila, it's our good friend Andrew Lawton, actually.
Fantastic. Yeah. He did a great job over the weekend at Danny Hozak's Freedom School event. He moderated a debate there too. So he does a great job. Eric Partanen gives us $5. Your thoughts on the lawsuit by VaccineChoiceCanada.com and lawyer Rocco Galati, who are suing the government and CBC on masks, vaccines, and shutdowns being illegal. I'm glad this question was asked because I'm CC'd on the tip line, and about every fifth email we get is about Rocco Galati. And David, I know you tried to reach out to him to actually cover this, and he didn't get back to you. So please, if you are watching this at home and you've emailed me 10, 15 times saying, Rebel News, you're not doing your job, you haven't reached out to Rocco Galati, why aren't you covering this? We tried. We can't make people talk to us. Yes. So, David, go ahead.
Indeed, Sheila, a week ago Monday, I believe, was when we were to have our sit-down interview at his downtown Toronto office. And I don't know what happened. I never heard back. I made calls, emails. I should say, in fairness, a few days after that, I did hear back. I just haven't had a chance with all the other assignments that we already had on schedule. So it's good that, you reminded me of Rocco's name, Sheila. I'll again reach out and try to. But honest to God, folks, we expected to have this posted last Tuesday, because that's when I went down to interview him, and it never materialized. And I'm not blaming Rocco for that. Maybe he got under the gun. Maybe there was a health issue. I don't know. But I'm open to making another appointment and having that interview, definitely.
Yes. And, friends at home, if you see something that we haven't reported on, I do appreciate you reaching out and putting things on our radar. But please remember that sometimes there are reasons we haven't reported on it, and that is usually because the people just don't get back to us. Maybe they get camera shy. TV is not for everybody, but we do try. We do try to cover everything within the Rebel realm. Let's keep going. $10 Canadian. Derek G. I'm reading Dinesh D'Souza, United States of Socialism. It's an eye-opener. Everything Trudeau does is about socialism. He wants us dependent on government. They don't want us to gain capital. Yeah, I mean, that's what CERB is all about, isn't it? And now there's musings that they want to keep CERB going and turn it into a universal basic income, which is the perfect disincentivization, I guess, to use a word I think I probably just made up, to keep people out of the workforce and dependent on the government. And if Justin Trudeau is paying your bills and promising to continue to pay your bills, then you're definitely going to vote for him next time.
Isn't that really the definition of totalitarianism, Sheila? The softer side of totalitarianism, to appropriate the ad slogan of Sears. It's that to make you dependent and, not to use the state stick but the carrot. And, I got to tell you, based on something Ezra said a few months ago about rereading 1984, that put a light bulb above my head. I went out, I reread the book very recently because it's been since high school since I last read it. I got to tell you, I had forgotten, I'm ashamed to say of how much I forgot about that book and how much more terrifying that book is today than when I read it in the late 70s. And I suggest everybody should read that, but it's more prescient today than even when it was back in 1948.
Yeah, Andrew Wilkow of The Blaze and of Patriot on SiriusXM, he always says that the government giving you something with an outstretched palm is fine, but the other hand is always a fist.
Yeah.
And the two always go hand in hand. Xanax, right? Did I get that right? You told me how to say it last time. Xanax gives us $2 Canadian. Actually, this is a great segue into a video clip that I think we have. Mercedes-Benz drivers sure do love you, David. Yeah, they do. And I think you're referring to David's trip to the musical chairs of hobo squats happening in Toronto and the greater Toronto region. Sounds like our Nathan Phillips Square Antifa Caliphate has sort of relocated somewhere else.
It is amazing. Very quickly, Sheila, yes, the Afro-Indigenous rising, which I understand from some tipsters is simply Afro-rising because there was some sort of a tiff with the Indigenous people and they left en masse. It relocated from Nathan Phillips Square, the home of Toronto City Hall, to Dufferin Grove Park, walking distance to the Food Benders Eatery. So if these guys get hungry, you can have a nice kale salad if you have $11 or something.
Down at the Antifa lunch counter.
So what a mad world this is. But I won't we'll talk. Why don't we run the video that you mentioned after you do the super chips of the super chats.
Lunchtime there.
In fact, Mr. Producer said we're going to run it now, and then we'll get back into what
Perfect.
the caller was the viewer was referring to, Sheila, regarding the Mercedes-Benz drivers who seem to have a chip on their shoulder for me for some reason. So here's the Monopoly kid.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Have a nice weekend.
My clip. Sorry.
Florida Free Palestine? No, don't.
That's a nice Mercedes you got.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I just want a free tank.
Well, folks, I am here at Dufferin Grove Park. That's near Bloor and Dufferin. Just a few minutes away, by the way, from Food Benders, that lovely eatery. And guess what? We were tipped off that this is now where the Nathan Phillips Square occupiers, i.e. the people who make up Afro-Indigenous Rising, this is where they have recamped. They were finally convinced to leave Nathan Phillips Square last Friday after occupying the square for 3 weeks. They vandalized the square, they put graffiti all over it, they urinated, they defecated everywhere, but you know what, I guess that's the thing. Boy, there's a lot of angry people driving Mercedes down here today.
Get out of here.
The horn's working.
News isn't news. Get out of
Have
here.
you tried the headlights? Huh? What?
Go.
Oh, we're on a public sidewalk, sir.
Go. Rebel News?
Yeah.
Gone.
Why is that, sir? We're on a public sidewalk.
Bunch of racist pieces of garbage.
Oh, that's a nice Mercedes. AMG, I'm impressed. How'd you get the coin for that? The point here, folks, is that here at Dufferin Grove Park, the Afro-Indigenous Rising has camped out illegally for at least a week. And it makes you wonder, is this what we're down to in John Tory's sanctuary city when it comes to illegal encampments? Is it a game of whack-a-mole? We boot them off Nathan Phillips Square and they come to another public park, namely
Dufferin Grove. Now, I did reach out to Brad Ross. He is the spokesman for the City of Toronto. I was curious if, the city is going to, I don't know, enact the law of the land by removing overnight campers from a park, and several overnights, I should add. And this was the response I got from Mr. Ross. Hi, David. There is a group there, yes, some of whom may have been at Nathan Phillips Square. That's not entirely clear. The city does not permit camping in its parks and will be taking appropriate action to ensure the group decamps as quickly and peacefully as possible. Now, the question arises, folks, what is the City of Toronto's definition of quickly? I mean, if we're talking geological time, in which a millennium is a blink of an eyelash, yeah, that's pretty quick. But like I said, they've been here for at least a week, and there is...
Yeah, so Sheila, that was interesting because before that video began, there was a Mercedes GLE SUV that came by, and the guy started shouting something about food vendors and free Palestine. And then just seconds later, that fellow in the Mercedes C-Class convertible, the AMG, that's the Mercedes phrase for their Skunk Works department, he came by blaring his horn, getting out, demanding that we leave. By the way, that is off the lot. That's a $100,000 car. I think the guy lived nearby. I would imagine homes in that neighborhood, 1.4, 1.6 million. And what I never dreamed we were going to capture that on camera, Sheila, because of course, the people in the tent city, these are unemployed and I would argue unemployable. And they're bums enjoying the summer. I know that tent city, if the city doesn't take action, come November, December, it'll whittle away big time. But what we saw with the Mercedes community were the champagne socialists. These are people driving $100,000 cars, living in multi-million-dollar homes, and they are waving the social justice warrior flag, fight the man, freedom to the people. I just wonder if that guy is a government worker, a teacher, or a CBC employee. Those are my first three guesses, right, Sheila? Yeah. But to, talk about tearing down the system and calling us racist and me racist, they can never articulate why we're racist or why I'm racist because, the short answer is, Sheila, we're not. And the third thing is, life seems really good for these Mercedes drivers in the Bluerdale area. Why are they so inexplicably angry? They're like that character from Mystery Men, Mr. Furious, a guy that just screams anger but has no power. That is their metaphor. So, I mean, Sheila, what do you make of this, that people in that neighborhood driving fancy cars, living in really nice houses, are on the side of the bums that have ruined Dufferin Grove Park?
Well, I echo your sentiment that these are people who are probably protected workers, as in they have careers where they will never get fired, either because they work for a high-powered union or they're in government. So CBC, the government, or academia. It's one of those three, and they're rich enough on the backs of other people to afford these bad ideas. Like they're the people who say, we should raise the carbon tax. Okay, because you can afford it, because you won't notice it, because you already buy overpriced groceries. The rest of us, we kind of care how much the cost of a jug of milk is. And it's funny that these gross, by and large, mentally ill, unemployed and unemployable people, they're holding hands with these rich people. I think if the homeless squatters got a little closer to the fancy people's houses, though, they wouldn't be so supportive of their ideas, because it's fine when it's in somebody else's backyard, but once it gets in theirs, no, we're not. Social justice is fine if it's over there, but don't bring it over here. We'll honk the horn and support you, but we don't want your smelly tents near our houses. That's usually how it works. And I, as someone who was raised with, we didn't have much. We had everything we needed, but like none of the stuff we wanted. And, I had a child when I was quite young, and I sort of created a life for myself after that through hard work and good choices. I got a real hard time with a bunch of people who've never been hard scrabble and never like pieced together a life and sort of scraped your way up the socioeconomic ladder. I've got a real hard time those people telling me what it takes not to be poor anymore and what poor people need. It's very paternalistic. And from what I understand, they're sort of against that kind of stuff.
But you know what, Sheila, we should point out to our folks, if they're not familiar with all of our Nathan Phillips Square reports, is the fact that there's basically a little bit of a class system with Afro-Indigenous rising, i.e., it's almost like another Orwellian book that's worth rereading, Animal Farm.
Yes.
The ringleaders, you think they're staying in a tent where it's like probably plus 50 degrees with the humid deck? Oh, no. They're at the Sheraton Hotel, $277 a night rooms begin at. It's the Stooges, and it's people, and I'm not trying to be pejorative here, but they're mentally ill people, they're homeless people, they're drug addicted people. Yep. They're the ones, they're the pawns in the tents sweating it out. But the ringleaders are at the Sheraton. And you say, but Menzies, where they get the money? Well, they get the money from dummies like that guy in the Mercedes, because as we revealed, more than $49,000 they raised. It's probably higher now, Sheila, through a GoFundMe page. And I wonder, all those, rich white liberals sipping their Chardonnay, do they feel okay that their donation of $200, $300, $500 is not going to fighting the man for racial justice, but for putting up the ringleaders at a suite at the Sheraton Hotel? I mean, this is unbelievable, Sheila. So, and one other thing I want to point out about that, and I thought this was perverse irony with an exclamation point on it. There was a little blue and white tent, and it had the poster Speaker's Corner on it. And when I think of Speaker's Corner, I think of Hyde Park in London. You get on a soapbox, you say whatever's on your mind. Could you imagine anyone going into that filthy encampment and they were to start a speech? Ladies and gentlemen, Toronto, look at this disgrace. I mean, would beat you up. They're not about free speech and freedom of expression and freedom of the press. These are censors. These are the people behind cancel culture. They want you to speak, but it has to be their narrative.
Yeah, and I'll go one step further when you say the like ringleaders of this are up, they're staying somewhere really nice. I feel a great deal of compassion for the exploited, albeit violent and vulgar people who are in these tents, because as you rightly point out, by and large, they're not the kind of people who are employable. So they'll do this. They'll sleep in a tent, a hot tent, for $25 or $50 a day. Yeah. They're not the kind of people who can go to homeless shelters. They've probably been kicked out of every single homeless shelter. Yeah. They need mental health treatment. They need drug treatment. But instead, they're being exploited by the ringleaders. And that exploitation is being funded by the likes of the people in the Mercedes, which, I mean, they all say we're advocates for the poor, and that's why we're socialists. And yet they're the ones exploiting the poor.
And Sheila, before you get to our recent batch of Super Chats, I agree with you. I have empathy in my heart for these people. And the reason why they're attracted to these causes is, here are some people, instead of booting them off the sidewalk or threatening to charge them with vagrancy, they're saying, please, please come join us, be part of our community. And here's a couple of bucks too. And that is what gets those people on side. They have no idea what the issues are or what the solutions are. No, they don't. Okay, let's keep going, because we do have a bunch of super chats. And oh my goodness, we only have 20 minutes left in the show. Holy. Okay, yes. Georgie, I think, or Georgie. Georgie, $5 Canadian says, someone in the chat
call the Toronto Star overpriced fish wrap. Ha ha ha. Yeah, they actually, I don't know if they even print the Toronto Star anymore. Do they? I don't know.
Sheila,
I've never
because
seen one.
that is the only way I will. I have a group of colleagues and friends, and we're on the same page as this. We cannot bring ourselves to actually pay for it. So if I'm at a food court and I see a copy of the Toronto Star left out for recycling, I will pick that up. I will go on their website, but they're getting a little crafty. I think you're allowed 5 articles per month or something like that, and then a paywall pops up. I'm not going on that paywall. So yeah, it is still being printed, but I can tell you their massive printing plant off the 400 around Highway 7 in Toronto, that has been closed down and is being dismantled. There's no reason to have the press run they used to have in its glory days.
Yeah, you and their investors both are not interested in paying for it. I think they're a penny stock now. Anyways, let's finish that super chat. It says, thank you, Rebel News, for all you do, and I cannot wait to leave Toronto. You know what? I can't wait for you to leave Toronto, too. Everybody should just leave Toronto. Mark Z gives us £2. Says, super crush on, Sheila. Super smart and beautiful. Oh, very, very gracious and kind. Thank you very much.
I endorse that message.
I was just thinking about Kamala Harris. David, did you see what she did to her face? Did you see? She was a fine-looking lady before. There was nothing wrong with her. She was a lady like myself of a certain vintage, and your face doesn't look the same way as it did when you were 20, but you still look like yourself, and you're aging gracefully, and then all of a sudden, she looks like a startled chameleon, and I don't know what's going on there. And
I wonder if Mr. Producer can get an image of Kamala Harris to show everybody.
It might be on my Twitter.
Okay.
And it's part of a greater problem. Like, fine, it's not easy, I guess, to age like in the public eye. I mean, everybody's a little bit self-conscious, but like I pointed out on my Twitter, when the reptile alien overlords finally do come to take over the earth, they're going to feel right at home, because all the women, young and old, between the ages of like 20 and 65, they all look like lizards. Like, what are they doing to themselves? They look awful. It's horrifying. She looked great before.
Oh, you know what, Sheila? I have no problem with people that, go out and get like hair transplants, have some cosmetic or plastic surgery. It's people trying. They want to look good. I get that, and I'll never condemn anyone for that. But there is a point where there is too much plastic surgery, and you actually achieve the opposite. That picture just proved your point. And I always think of Michael Jackson, to the point where he had so many nose jobs. I believe one day his nose actually caved in, like a mine that had been overmined. And you look at Michael Jackson at the point where when he passed away some 10 years ago, and you look at Michael Jackson, say in the mid 80s, and you age, but it's not even a recognizable person anymore, is it?
No, it's terrible. And it's funny because a lot of this is coming from like the same women who are all like about fat acceptance. Like, oh, your body standards, don't impose your body standards on me, are drastically altering their face so that they all look like each other. If you go on Instagram and look at all the influencers, they all look like each other with just different shades of hair. It's very weird. And I wonder, like, how are these women one day going to say to their daughters, oh, don't be insecure about the shape of your nose, even though you carved into your own face like you were an October pumpkin. I think the societal problems from all of this are 20 years out, and we're going to see it, but not quite yet. Anyways, I went on about nothing there. Okay, Lydia Sinclair gives us $5 Canadian. Thank you for showing the truth. Love you both. Thank you very much. Bill Howie gives us $2 Canadian and says, I meant IPGC must host a general election debate too. Oh, yes, that would be great. Could we get Justin Trudeau to show up to an independent press gallery general election debate? Probably not. Jagmeet Singh definitely wouldn't.
No.
But it would be okay to just everybody stand there and ask the Conservative leader questions, I suppose. KC1 K5165304 gives us $2 Canadian. We love Drea. Can she please come on the show? Isn't she great? Maybe now's a good time to get to Drea's video, and then we'll just sort of breeze through and catch up to the super chats at the end. Maybe? I don't know. I can't hear Justin, so it doesn't matter.
Yes. Justin saying sure. And Drea Humphrey has been wonderful in her debut. And I believe the video we're running is on the yoga studio. Will you see this one, folks?
Here in BC, we've graduated to phase 3 of the lockdown. This means most businesses are open with restrictions. And you would think that now would be the time that many Canadians would be happy to show their support for the surviving small businesses, right? Well, that doesn't seem to be the case for at least one yoga studio located out here in Vancouver, BC. Bikram Yoga Commercial Drive is actually being victimized by a cancel culture mob. Why? Because CBC misrepresented the studio's reasons for restricting the use of masks while practicing yoga, with a headline that read, "Vancouver Yoga Studio turns away customers who want to wear face masks," says patron. Now that seemed like a rather bold stance for a yoga studio to me, although I reminded myself it is Bikram Yoga after all. For those of you who don't know what Bikram Yoga is, it's often referred to as hot yoga. According to livescience.com, rooms are heated often up to a sweltering 41 degrees Celsius and kept at a fairly high humidity. So, what do our health advisors have to say about the combination of exercise and heat? We're going to get to that. Naturally, I read the CBC's article in full to see if I could get some clarification regarding the yoga studio's controversial stance, although maybe it shouldn't have been controversial at all, you'll see. And then after that, I popped over to the yoga studio's website to get the full story. I realized then that CBC had left out crucial information that appropriately explains why the yoga studio has a no mask rule. We'll get to that in just a second, but first let's walk through and see how CBC first reported the story and what that meant for this small business and their reputation online post-lockdown. The original version of CBC's story implied to the reader that the rejection of masks was about the impression of fear, not about following the World Health Organization's advice. Bikram Yoga Commercial Drive says those who want to wear masks should not practice at the location, according to an employee who answered the phone when CBC called. Then they exert from the yoga studio's website, "Our vision is that we all individually take full accountability for how we feel, and if we feel scared or sick, please do not come to our studio." That's it. That's all they took from the website. They also reported that Alison Cloth says she showed up to the hot yoga class on Friday morning wearing a reusable cotton mask and was asked by one of the owners to leave the class. He said to me, "The other owner and I have discussed this. We don't want masks here," Cloth said. Cloth, who said she was wearing a mask as a precaution due to past health issues involving her lungs, said the owner told her that wearing a mask would make other patrons fearful. I said, "I'm not afraid. I mean, I'm afraid of you, but other than that, I'm not afraid. I do have some medical issues in my history and I'm just being precautionary." So that sounds pretty bad at first glance, right? Except the yoga studio clearly indicates on the website, as soon as you click on it, it pops up that they are trying to be in compliance with the guidelines set out by the World Health Organization on their Facebook page. How can you miss it? Here's how they wrote it. "Dear community, we hope that this post finds you well. The World Health Organization shared that people should not wear masks when exercising, as masks may reduce the ability to breathe comfortably. Face masks can be worn in the lobby and change rooms only. Masks are not permitted inside the yoga practice rooms." So CBC literally had to ignore all of the top to the bottom of that. The yoga studio is now simply following WHO recommendations, as in one of those trusted sources that we're supposed to look at for COVID-19, and that Facebook.
Well, I got to tell you, Sheila, the first thing that strikes me about that story is a bit of a sidebar issue, but someone with the surname Cloth is an advocate for cloth masks. It's kind of like Dr. Otto Octavius in the Spider-Man comics through a lab accident becoming Dr. Octopus. I mean, what are the odds, right? But that was an incredible piece. And basically, the yoga studio is being penalized for following the rules, the rules of the same organizations that the CBC considers sacred and the trusted authority. And let's be honest, Sheila, let's cut through the crap here. These are typically young, healthy people going to these yoga studios. We know when you crunch the numbers, you have a 6 times higher risk crossing the street to go to that yoga studio of being killed than you do of dying in that yoga studio. But that is just a shocking hatchet job. Has CBC published an apology or retraction yet?
They did eventually have to put a retraction on there. What they did, incited a mob to go after this yoga studio to hurt their online reputation. They left a bunch of bad reviews saying these people don't care about your health, blah, 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 blah. And the yoga studio is like, we do care about your health. That's why we're trying to follow the people you tell us to follow. That's the World Health Organization. And they say not to wear a mask. But CBC, they just get to write a retraction, and that's the end of it. In the meantime, this yoga studio is left to pick up the pieces. Like, this story of Drea's had everything. It had the CBC getting a story wrong, the online cancel mob, a struggling small business just trying to open up, and mixed messages from the World Health Organization. And CBC, with their crappy reporting, they're creating conservatives in the Lower Mainland, because I'm willing to bet yoga studio owners and yoga studio patrons in the Lower Mainland, probably not conservative voters. But when they get treated like this, and you can see in real time what the rest of us have been complaining about for a long time, you're making conservative voters because you're that awful. And I suppose that's the silver lining in all of this.
Let me ask you a question, Sheila, because it is the CBC. Do you think they made an honest mistake in their reporting, or do you think they deliberately deleted crucial and relevant information that would destroy the narrative that they produced?
In CBC's version of their story, they skipped over like that first paragraph that Drea was reading, where it says, this is why we're not asking you to wear a mask. It's because of the World Health Organization. This is what they've said. CBC included the last line of that paragraph in their story. So they read over the explanation, disregarded the explanation, and then inserted the last line of that paragraph in their story. And they went on completely unsubstantiated baloney from this lady wearing this cloth lady who's advocating wearing masks. I mean, it was just, they went on her word of mouth. They didn't say, like, there was no phone recording. There was no anything. This lady called the CBC to say this yoga studio said this, and CBC did a whole hit piece on them. And just how much of their business is left after this, after they've just had this massive hit piece run on them, after they've been closed for 3 months?
Well, that's what you get with the Karen Broadcasting Corporation. Sheila, we have more super chats, don't we?
We do. Wyatt Claypool gives us $5. Are you guys going to look into Aaron O'Toole, Peter MacKay, and the Muslim Brotherhood? We look into everything. This sort of stuff has to be excessively lawyered. I know that Aaron O'Toole is already suing somebody who didn't do their legal legwork before broadcasting something like that for $2.5 million. So the threat of litigation is there. That doesn't scare us. As long as we have our facts straight. And that's what's most important. If something has been repeated and repeated and repeated, it gets into the ether and it seems like a fact. But is it a fact? You've got to determine that first. You can't have an opinion that isn't based on fact, because then you didn't come by it honestly and you haven't done sort of your background work, and that's what's really important that has to be done on that story.
And I am indeed working on something along this angle, Sheila, but as folks, as Sheila just said, want to make sure, as the saying goes, get it first, but first get it right. So we just got to connect those dots.
Yeah. And there could be something there, there could be nothing there, but the active investigation is the important part here. Will Z, 549, did Rebel find Jonathan Yaniv praying in downtown Toronto?
Oh, yes, I did. That's how I spent my Sunday morning. And yes, we'll get the footage of that up as soon as we vet it and put together a video. It is, folks, incredible. I'm not going to, give away the narrative or the storyline, but Jonathan Yaniv with Mama Yaniv that does all this talking and whose skirt he hides behind. I caught them coming out of the Pantages Hotel, and yes, law enforcement was called on me for practicing journalism, but wait till you see this story. It's worth waiting for, let me tell you.
It's always something else with those two. It's the kaleidoscope, cornucopia for the eyes every time they're on the screen.
Like I said, Sheila, for all those bemoaning the fact that the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition here in Toronto, no longer has the freak show since the 70s, well, when you have the Yanivs of the world, you don't need it.
Yeah, they came to town. Okay, Theo, the local owner, gives us £5 or £5. Leftists on Facebook have said those Antifa protesters who camped out are paid actors hired by Ezra, and he gave them $8,000. Look, if we had $8,000 to blow on protesters, I would be on here jangling for super chats right now. But I mean, those Sheila went for a lot cheaper than $8,000. I'll tell you that. It's probably $20 a day, paid by a union, sitting out there in Nathan Phillips Square.
Full confession. No, that viewer got us. That guy that whipped up in the Mercedes C-Class convertible AMG. We found an Antifa guy, and Ezra and I went to Midtown Mercedes, and we bought him a $100,000 automobile to make our narrative. You got us, sir.
Yeah. We also went back in time, got a spot, a food counter, called it Food Vendors, told that lady to be crazy, be bigoted, be anti-Semitic, so that years out we could get a story, one story. Yeah.
It's all a conspiracy.
If we had that kind of time and money, if only we had that kind of time. By the way, I would have got those people nicer camping equipment if we had that kind of money to throw around, those crappy tents that they had. Okay. Tom Longland, but those tents, those are from somebody who doesn't go camping. So there's no Sheila input into that, that's for sure. Tom Longland, $10 Canadian. Great show. The CBC is just an extension of the government. Why would you expect any more for your buck than what you see buy from leaders? That's true, too. They really are like the undeclared public relations arm of the Liberal Party of Canada. Kappa Deseo gives us 22 Norwegian krone. I was going to say North Korean again. Free Palestine, sure, but free them of whom? You know what? Let's free Palestine from Hamas and from their terrorist leadership. Metal Novak gives us $5 Canadian. Did you guys hear about that loser Charles Adler call conservatives that don't support Peter MacKay as a candidate Nazis? I avoid anything that Charles Adler says, and I don't pay a lot of attention to it because usually he deletes it like an hour later after people just rip him for it. I do see the screenshots sometimes that people send me, but he is one of those former staunch conservatives who were staunch conservative when someone was paying them to be staunch conservative, who are no longer staunch conservative because someone is paying them to be liberal now. And
Yeah,
But we saw that happen with Michael Corrin, too.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of a certain reverend. For years, I was a regular contributor with Charles Adler, and I really like Charles Adler. We haven't spoken in years since he's, I guess, gone over to the other side. And it's sad, Sheila, because I think what's driving it is just the very definition of being a mercenary. Your sword is for hire. If it's, Team Blue or Team Red, doesn't matter. Whoever's going to pay me. And so I don't want to criticize Charles, because I keep my brain parked in around 2014, 2015, before all this madness happened, and I think warmly of the good old days. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at somebody like Dave Rubin, who I think came to his political conversion quite honestly. He's never malicious to the brainwashed left because he was one of them. He sort of understands. I mean, he's not like cruel and unkind. Yeah. And because I think he came by it so honestly, he sees, like, I went through that. I know what it's all about. But these people who were once conservative for cash and now they're liberal for cash, they are so malicious and vindictive to conservatives. And it leads me to believe that they were probably never all that conservative. They were just, like you say, mercenaries.
Well, Sheila, I think we're already over time. We got more super chats and Mr. Producer's looking at his Baconator burger with lust in his eyes, so we better get to that.
Yeah, I'm going. Derek G gives us $10 Canadian, French language, Montreal-based independent media Le Studio, whom were at the Vaccine Choice press conference about their lawsuit announcement, told their 45,000 YouTube subscribers that an invitation was sent to TR. I don't know who TR is. That Rebel News? I don't know.
Tommy Robinson, maybe?
Oh, Tommy Robinson? I don't know. Jimmy, the real Donald T, gives $6.99. They could be the rich people funding these events. Follow the money. Yeah, there's a lot of those. Theo Local Loner gives us £5. To follow up my super chat, I meant to say $49,000, not $8,000. Leftists have said that Ezra paid the tent city protesters $49,000. We would have an extra editor. So that our videos would be up sooner if we had that kind of money. We wouldn't be spending it on gross people to flop in a public square.
And that's only half the cost of that Mercedes, so it can't be us.
Yeah, it's not us. Greater Man gives us $3.99. Adrenochrome makes them look like lizards. That or just too much plastic surgery and Botox. Just leave your faces alone, people. Toys are for boys, $24 Canadian. Hey, Sheila. I missed your birthday the other day. Here's $24 to celebrate your 24th birthday, just to guess at your age, but that should be close. Oh, you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's better. See, that's better than plastic surgery. Okay, Richard Black, $15. Can Derek Sloan win Maritime and Ontario Centre and or left centre voters with his unapologetic conservative positions? Or do we have to run with O'Toole just to keep the Liberals out of power? I don't know. But I don't... moving closer to the Liberals is what put Justin Trudeau in power. He didn't seem like that much of a difference.
Indeed.
And that's the problem. It's just like the NDP here in Alberta. The old PCs had moved so far left that Rachel Notley didn't seem like that much of a change.
Wow.
And so you have to be careful.
Incredible.
And that's it. We're all caught up.
Well, Sheila, we've gone over time, so I guess I want to thank you so much for... Oh, one more.
Did I get one more? I don't see it. Oh, there it is.
Every dollar or corner counts.
Oh, Derek G, concerning my last super chat, TR is Rebel Media. I ran out of words. I gotcha. I'm not sure about that. We get a lot of information sent to the tips line, so sometimes we do miss stuff. But we did, like David said, reach out to set up a one-on-one interview with the lawyer involved, and that just didn't work out.
And you have my word.
One more.
I'll reach out again today. Oh, and one more, Sheila? Okay.
Yeah. Observer Dude gives us £2. Has Jonathan Yaniv been arrested yet? Well, he's out on the lam then if he was. I think David will get to the bottom of that. The cops were called yesterday, but they weren't on Jonathan Yaniv. They came for David. So
he should be arrested for filing a false police report, which is what he allegedly did yesterday, and that is part of the story as well, folks. But with the Yanivs, the insanity never runs out of supply. Well, folks, on the behalf of Mr. Producer, who did a great job today, and my co-host Sheila Gunn Reid, I'm David Menzies, and I just want to say a special thank you to all the Super Chatters. We really do depend on your contributions, so thank you so much for that, and we will see you again at this time tomorrow. Be safe.